Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Froggy the Gator. And like I always have to ask at the beginning of these, have you told your friends about Froggy the Gator? Because that is the best way to help the show grow. And if you like Froggy the Gator, you'll love SherwoodKids.com, where there are thousands, and I mean thousands, of stories, audiobooks, ebooks, videos, shows, and of course, podcasts like this one, and they're all safe, they're all ad-free, and they're parent-approved. So get with your parents, and make sure you go check out SherwoodKids.com. And as we like to do on our show, we are beginning today's episode with a joke. That's right, a hilarious joke, in fact, written by our listeners Quinn, who is 7 years old, and Casey, who is 4 years old. And are you ready for their joke? Okay, here it goes. Here goes Quinn and Casey's joke. Why couldn't the snake talk? Why couldn't the snake talk? Now, this is a tricky one, to be fair, but it's also a hilarious one. So I'm going to let you think about it for a second. Why couldn't the snake talk? Are you ready for the answer? Why couldn't the snake talk? Because it had a frog in its throat. That's right. He couldn't talk because he had a frog in his throat, which is a pun, because when you have a frog in your throat, it means you are maybe too nervous to speak or something like that. But also, it's pretty likely that the snake ate a frog, so he literally couldn't speak because there was a frog in there and it was blocking his air passageway in his esophagus. Quinn and Casey, that is hilarious. Great work, and thank you both so much for that one. And man, I really need to compose myself after that joke. Sometimes I get laughing so hard at how funny you all are that I have to pause my recording and get my composure, so I'm going to do that really quickly. Okay, we're back. Whew. I had to go have a laugh at Quinn and Casey's joke again. Frog in the throat. It's a snake because he had a frog and he couldn't speak. I can't believe it. So we're back today with today's story, which is a very special story for two reasons. The first reason it's special is because it was inspired by one of our listeners, Cade, who is 5 years old. And the second reason it's special is because it's about something really, really important. And today's subject matter is important whether you're a kid or an adult. What's it about? It's about facing our fears. And if you're a kid listening to this, you may think, oh, well, when I grow up, I won't be afraid of anything. Everything will be easier because I'll be a grown-up. Well, let me give you the grown-up's perspective on that. As a former kid and a current grown-up, a lot of things are easier when you grow up. That's true. But there are still some things that can be really, really frightening. There are some things that are scary, even if you're an adult. And I think the main difference is the type of things that are scary change. When you're little, you're afraid of one set of things, and when you're grown up, you can get afraid of different things. And sometimes those things overlap. And that's actually a great thing to talk to your parents about. So if you want to, when the show's over, you guys can talk about what's scary when you're a kid and what's scary when you're a grown-up. And the important thing to remember is that everybody, and I mean everybody on Earth right now, gets scared sometimes. So it's a normal thing to feel. And Froggy, being a kid, is no exception to that rule. There are some things he is scared of. And one of those things just so happens to be riding his bike down a big hill in his neighborhood. Now, this isn't any normal hill, to be fair. It's a huge hill. And Gator Grove is actually pretty flat, but if you're a fan of the show, you know that there are also mountains not too far away. So it gets kind of hilly in some spots as you get closer to the mountains. And there's this one big hill outside of Froggy's neighborhood that he rides around nearby with Mr. Hummus and Wormbird and Tomato Hedgehog. And one time he was riding his bike down this hill and he fell. He lost control of his bike and he skidded and scraped up his knees and elbows really bad. And ever since that day, he hasn't wanted to ride down that hill again. Mr. Hummus and Wormbird and Tomato Hedgehog aren't scared of the hill, so they ride down it all the time, but Froggy always walks his bike down the hill, which on the one hand keeps him from falling, but on the other hand makes him feel kinda left out and makes him wish he had the courage to ride down the hill on his bike. So one day, Froggy was sitting in his room with his toys, including his robot friend, Robot Mike. And he was thinking about how he wished he wasn't so afraid of the big hill. He was thinking about how he wished he could ride down it with his friends without being scared. He drifted off daydreaming as he's prone to do when he imagined his friend Robot Mike started talking. "Hey, Froggy," Robot Mike said, "what's on your mind?" "Well," Froggy said to Robot Mike, "I'm just thinking about that big hill in our neighborhood where I fell on my bike a few weeks ago. I'm sitting here wishing it wasn't so scary and that I could ride down it without being afraid." "Aha," Robot Mike said, "I thought that might be what's on your mind. Hey, why don't you come with me on this imaginary journey I was about to take, because it might be helpful." So Froggy the Gator and Robot Mike imagined they were flying through the air above Gator Grove. They could do that because Robot Mike had really cool jetpack rocket boosters coming out of his feet, one of his many technologically advanced features, and as they were flying, they saw a big plateau beneath them. And a plateau, if you don't know, is kind of like a mountain with the top cut off, so it's nice and flat on top, but it's still really high up in the air above sea level. "Hang on to my hand, Froggy," Robot Mike said. "We're going to parachute down to that plateau." "Wait, what?" Froggy said. But before he knew what was happening, Robot Mike turned off his jetpack rocket boosters and deployed a parachute, and just like that, they were floating safely through the air and landed on the plateau. "Whoa," Froggy said. "I was not expecting that." "Don't worry," Robot Mike said. "Remember, this is just imagination, so we are 100% safe, and it's meant to illustrate a point more than anything else. Now come on, there are a couple other things we need to do." So Froggy held on to Robot Mike, and then Robot Mike made some really cool skis come out of his feet, robot skis in fact, and then they sped down the sides of the plateau together, weaving through trees and bushes and going really fast. When they got to the bottom of the hill, Robot Mike then shot out a grappling hook, since he had those in his robot equipment belt, of course, and he hooked it back onto the top of the plateau. "Last thing, Froggy," he said, "let's rock climb up this plateau." So before Froggy even had time to feel afraid, they started rock climbing up the side of the big cliff. When they arrived at the top, Robot Mike asked Froggy, "What did you think of all that, Froggy? That was a lot of action, wasn't it?" Froggy thought for a second. "You know what?" he said. "I was afraid at first. But once I started doing it, parachuting and skiing and rock climbing, my fears just went away. I just focused on the task at hand, and I wasn't that afraid anymore." Then back in the real world, Froggy heard his dad's voice. "Froggy!" Daddy the Gator shouted from downstairs. "Your friends Mr. Hummus, Tomato Hedgehog, and Wormbird are here to ride bikes." And with that, Froggy strapped on his helmet, rode to the big hill, and went straight down, in control and safely. Because he knew now that things aren't as scary as he made them in his mind. The scariest part of anything, in fact, whether it's going down a big hill on your bike, or starting a new job, or welcoming a new addition to your family, the scariest part is just the worrying about it before it actually starts. And the best way to get rid of the worry is to just go ahead and get started.